Hi friend, thanks for joining me for today's yoga. I thought we'd try some somatic yoga today, and what I love the most about somatic yoga is that the same movements can be used for a variety of purposes. For example, the movements we're doing today will help to ease a tight back, to hydrate the psoas, and to relax the nervous system. Additionally, when you practice yoga like this all the time, you have the potential to reduce inflammation by your body because it's balancing for the immune system. Let's get started laying on the back. So we're going to start laying on the back, and it's important for you to prop your head appropriately. So if you lay on your back, and we'll start with the knees bent and the feet flat on the floor. If you feel like your chin is pointing up towards the ceiling like mine is now, it's a good idea to put a blanket or a small pillow underneath your head like this. Now, I will invite you to just relax your arms onto the floor. Take a deep breath. Let it go slowly, either through the mouth or through the nose. Just feel the floor underneath you. Feel the weight of your body on the floor. Sense the bottoms of your feet touching the floor. Your sacrum, shoulder blades, and the back of your head. Sense that there's really some flatness and support here on the floor. It's a wonderful reference point for us when we're learning about alignment of the spine. So next, we're going to do a little before picture. We'll be doing an after picture later. And to do this, let's just put the feet out on the floor one at a time. Nice and easy. And right away, I'm noticing my back is arching up off the floor. I really need this back relaxation practice today. So if that's what you're feeling too, just notice, right? Notice the level of tension or pinchiness or arching you're feeling in your back. And you could even take a hand and stick it under there. Just try to take a snapshot and remember how easy it is to get your hand under there, under the low back, how much space there is, okay? How much stretching you're feeling in the fronts of the hips, okay? And then we don't have to stay in this position any longer. We're bending the knees again, putting the feet flat on the floor into what we call constructive rest. So we want the feet to be in alignment with the knees and the hips. So if you were to stretch the leg out, theoretically, the ankle, knee, and hip would all be in a straight line. Or if you were looking at yourself from above, those three joints would all be aligned. And the toes are pointing at the bottom of the mat. And the feet are close enough to your body that you feel a relaxation of the low back. They're close enough, but they're not so close that your back is flat against the floor. We're looking for the Goldilocks zone here with our constructive rest. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is a really basic staple move in somatic yoga. It's called the arch and curl. And to do that, all you have to do is point your tailbone down towards the floor. And you might feel your head kind of sliding or your chin coming down. That's fine. Let the head follow the movement. That's going to help relax you even more. And then, so that's the arch portion of this arch and curl. And then if we flatten the back towards the floor, that's the curl. So we're arching and curling. And if you want to use your breath here, certainly it's a great idea to do that. It helps you relax even more. You can inhale as you're arching your back away from the floor. And then exhale as you're lengthening your back towards the floor. Now, if the breathing isn't working for you, don't worry about it. Take what's useful, leave the rest behind. Okay. And check in. Check in with your glute muscles here. So a lot of the time when I'm teaching this in a class, I'll see people as they're lengthening their back towards the floor, they'll be pushing their feet into the floor and they'll be clenching their butt, or they might even be lifting up off the floor like this. But that's not what we're doing. We're scaling it way back. So we don't have any need for the glute muscles. See if you can make this movement happen just by using the front and back muscles of your torso. Okay? Inhaling, arching the back away from the floor, and exhaling, lengthening the back towards the floor. One of the ways to make sure your somatic yoga practice is as effective as it can be is to go slowly. We never rush these practices. It really does just take time to get the body to let go of the tension that it's holding on to. Remember, your body is holding on to tension for a good reason. Whether that's physical, as in the case of injuries or compensations, whether it's neurological or related to stress, it all takes time to let things go. So next I want to invite you to try adding a little upper body element to this. So as you're tilting your pelvis away from you, tailbone comes towards the floor and you're inhaling, there's a little bit of contraction in the low back there. Feel the way your chin comes down towards your collarbones and press your shoulders into the floor. And then as you tilt the pelvis back, eventually the shoulders relax up off the floor. Tilt the pelvis forward, then the shoulders into the floor, relax the pelvis, relax the shoulders. So this becomes like a wave. And if you're a visual person, you can imagine in your mind, visualize a wave traveling up your spine all the way into your shoulders. So your whole body is kind of undulating here. And if you're more of a sensory kind of person, see if you can feel the wave going up from the tailbone all the way up to the base of the skull as your spine becomes the waves of the ocean. If you're an auditory person, you can imagine the sound of the ocean, the sound of waves. Good. And after a few more rounds, when you're ready, we can come to a rest. And see if you can notice a residual sensation of movement, a residual wave kind of going through your torso, even though you're not really moving anymore. So that was the arch and curl movement. And I also like to call that one rocking. So if that was rocking, the next one will be rolling. We're going to rock and roll. We can take the feet a little bit wider, maybe about as wide as a yoga mat. The ankles will be a little bit wider than the hips here. Okay, and so we're taking that up and down movement, we're going to make it into a side-to-side movement. Take a breath, and as you exhale, press your right foot down into the floor just enough, just barely enough to lift the right side of your pelvis, so you'll feel your right butt cheek coming up off the floor. And then as you exhale, lower it back down. And as you inhale, press the left foot into the mat and then lift your left side, the left side of your butt up off the floor. Exhaling, put that down. Again, we want to go slow. We also want to make these movements small. When we go slow and when we make our movements really small, we have a distinct opportunity to notice the smallest things possible. And this is how we increase our sensitivity to fluctuations of energy, fluctuations of muscle tension, and neurological activation. Being able to observe these things is very useful in day-to-day life if you're trying to, for example, maintain composure through difficult situations. Or if you're just trying to relieve chronic stress. So pay attention to which butt cheek is engaging, right? If we're lifting the left side, it should be the left glutes that are contracting, but really only like 20 or 30% of their maximum. Remember, we're trying to soften the body here. And sometimes people will notice that both cheeks engage simultaneously, and they have a really hard time doing it independently of each other. And so if that's happening for you, just notice, do your best to separate them out, but also know that this isn't all going to happen in one day, right? We just accept what's present without judging it and being open to change later. So if we wanted to add an upper body element to this rolling, we could press the shoulder into the floor. So if you're lifting your left side of your pelvis, you could press the left shoulder down into the floor and feel the shoulder blade muscles engaging there. Exhaling, we'll rock through the center. Inhaling, lifting the right side and pressing the right shoulder blade into the floor. And the object here is just to get some pressure going across the body diagonally. So we have pressure, for example, going into the left butt cheek as it's pressed against the floor and the right one is lifted, but we also have pressure going into the right shoulder at the same time. We don't need to really arch the low back. The low back isn't really doing anything. It's kind of along for the ride, which is beautiful because it gives those vertebrae a chance to articulate loosely. They're fully supported by the muscles above them and below them. Good. Last one here. Okay. So if you ever do this on your own, you're free to do it as long as you like, really. You're never going to do too much of this kind of work. In fact, if you have a really high degree of chronic tightness, for example, in the glutes, this could feel like a nice massage, a really gentle massage that you could keep doing for quite a long time, just gently working those tissues, trying to get them to soften up. So now we're moving on to the clock face movement. And before we do that, I want to give you some context, something to guide you through. So if you imagine your body, your lower body from the waist down to the tailbone as a clock, we're going to call the tailbone 6 o'clock, and we're going to call the belly button 12 o'clock. So that means that the right hip is 9 o'clock and the left hip is 3 o'clock. So when we did the arch and curl, we were going from 12 to 6. When we did the side to side, the rolling, that was 3 and 9. We're going to start at 12 and go around to 9 and down to 6 and up to 3. So we're just going to be rocking around the clock with the pelvis. And we'll start by taking a breath. On the exhale, lengthen your back towards the floor, pulling the belly button down. And then rocking or rolling over to 9 o'clock, the left hip. Arching over to 6 o'clock, the tailbone. Over to 3 o'clock, the right side. And back on the exhale to 12 o'clock. You'll notice the glutes alternately contracting and relaxing depending on which side is up. And as we go around from 3 from the right side to 12 to the belly button, we want to be exhaling. That's going to be helping you engage a little bit more of your abdominal muscles. And then as we wrap around 9 and 6, we want to be inhaling as we arch the back away from the floor. And exhaling as we flatten the back towards the floor. Now, if you want to add a pelvic floor movement with this, you could be inhaling, stretching the pelvic floor here as we arch away from the floor at 6 o'clock. And then as you exhale, coming around 3 to 12, pulling the belly button in, that would be the time when you would pull up the pelvic floor, pulling up the genitals, pulling up the anus, inhaling, relaxing that. So we are using the pelvic floor and the abdominal muscles at the same time to move the pelvis. And hopefully we don't have to use the glutes too much, really just maybe the tiniest little bit if you want to get extra lift. But here's a little experiment you can try. See if you can make this movement happen only using your pelvic floor muscles and your abdominal muscles. And when you do that, the movement's going to get a lot smaller. So notice that, and that's okay. Smaller muscles, fewer muscles, smaller movement. More subtlety. A lot of my clients really struggle with this one. It's hard to isolate these muscles at first, but once you get the hang of it, it seems to stay. It doesn't go away. All right, so then we'll stop just for a moment, really briefly, and then we're going to go in the opposite direction. But I want you to just kind of relax before we do that. A little sacred pause here. Reflecting on if there's any sensation that you can perceive anywhere in the body, even though you're in stillness. And when you're ready, we'll go back into movement in the opposite direction. So let's inhale, point the tailbone down, and then we can rock over to the left side, 9 o'clock, up to 12 o'clock, exhaling here, inhaling over to the right. Exhaling to bring the belly button in and the pelvic floor up. And what I'm noticing right now is, see, I have a lot of tension in my glutes today. And so this feels exquisite, just rolling the glute muscles against the floor. It's a really, really subtle, gentle massage, and that is the best way to relax chronically tight muscles. Remember, it takes time. So I want to point out that sometimes people do find some jerkiness through portions of this movement, or perhaps even all of this movement, or maybe even just in one direction. That's normal too. That's definitely indication that there might be something happening in that part of the body that you'll want to use this practice again and again to smooth that out. Smoothing out the wrinkles. Okay, just about 2 more circles here. relax. Feel into your body from the tailbone all the way up to the base of the skull. Notice what your breath is doing. There's a chance the breath might be softer, easier than it was before. Maybe, maybe not, just notice. And then we're going to put the legs out again for our after shot, our after photo. So one leg at a time, nice and slow here. We're never in a rush in somatic yoga. So we're going to let the legs rest. Before we put the hands under the back, just notice the amount of stretching sensation you feel in the fronts of the hips. And then notice the sensation in the back. Maybe there was some pinchiness before. If there was, is that the same, less, or more? And then we can put the hands under the back just to see. Yeah. I definitely feel like my back is flatter now. Okay. And place your hands together in front of your heart. And before we close our somatic yoga practice, we'll send our well wishes out into the world. May all beings everywhere be happy, peaceful, and free from the causes of their suffering. And may all people on this planet have access to everything they need to thrive and be happy, because they deserve it just as much as I do. I bow to the light in each of you because it's the same as the light in me. Thank you for joining me for yoga today. I hope you feel well. Namaste.